Okay, right, let's get going, shall we? So, this is Digital Arts, session number 1. We are going to do quite a lot today of very kind of specific technical workflows. So this is about getting everyone to align, getting you all up to a baseline of ability in terms of how you interact with software and how you interact with the processes of designing a digital art piece or a series of digital art pieces. All right, so there will be points in time actually where I say something that you already know, that you're completely aware of. And there'll be times when I say something and you'll go, no, it's different, because you know a different way to do it. Okay, and that's completely fine. But the idea of the first session in particular is to just get everybody up to the same level of competency. So in session 2, when I say, right, everyone open the file, set it to this, and this, you all just kind of do it. Yeah, you can follow those instructions and you understand where bad decisions can be made with the basics of something like Photoshop. So just quick show of hands, how many of you know Photoshop? Who kind of knows it? I like a jazz hand. Is that like, I know it a little bit, or is that I know it so much that I can do a jazz hand? No, it's like a 90. All right, okay, so you've all used it before. I have been using Photoshop since 98, 99, version 3. Photoshop 3 was kind of the one that I got stuck into. And I'm being boastful here, I reckon I know 60% of Photoshop. 65 tops, because there is this as a software package, it is so big and so diverse that there are a whole series of processes in this that I have never heard of, that I have absolutely no clue what they do, because that's what Photoshop has become. It's become this behemoth piece of software that's kind of a solution for everything. I mean, yes, you can do paintings in it, but you can also do like basic word processing. You can do website wireframing. You can do basic app interface development. You can edit video. You can animate. Like you can do 3D. I remember that blew people's minds in like 2007 when they brought in 3D elements, and people were like, "Whoa, what is this?" But yeah, it's so big that actually no one will ever know all of it. It changes too fast. Even today, there's a really cool little trick I'm going to show you about switching to, like, quick switches to like grayscale, so you can see the values in your work. And I knew that this could be done, and I just went back earlier to remind myself, what are the clicks to get to this tool? And I opened up a drop-down menu. I promise you, I didn't understand anything on that list. There was this list of words, and I didn't know any of them, because it was just a part of Photoshop that I'd never been to before. You know, it's this one dialog box that was just completely new to me. So don't feel like the process of understanding digital art and digital painting is the same as understanding a piece of software, because it is absolutely not. They are completely different things. And I can promise you that the better you are at the principles of something like digital painting or digital art, the more capable you will be to apply that to loads of different mediums. Okay, a lot of artists that I know that are now traditional painters who use materials like gouache, use gouache paint all the time, they do that now because they started in digital art. They learned the principles and the underlying practices that informed that discipline and went, if I can do this on a screen, I reckon I can do this with actual paint. So they transition out and start using different materials. Okay, and it's the same for like animations, where so many animators who work in 3D now never learned 3D, they trained in 2D, but the principles are the same. You learn the principles and you can apply them to almost any software. Or as one of my tutors once said to me, literally anyone can learn software. You can teach a monkey Photoshop. It's like, wow, okay, fair enough. But you can't teach a monkey to animate, I'm pretty sure. Right, so let's get started. Can you all please open up Photoshop, just so you're at the home dialog box, which is not where I am. I'm going to go to the home dialog box, which should look something like this. And I'm going to hit the button that says Create New.
Is this a spare keyboard?
You can take the keyboard.
Is it plugged into?
Shouldn't be. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, home dialog box. This is where we all make our first mistake. And I mentioned it when we did the briefing, actually. I was talking to third years about this the other day as well. People open up Photoshop and hit enter. So when you hit enter, you just kind of get Oh, I'm not even on the dialog box. You just hit create, and you're there, and you're in, and you're like, whoa, let's go, let's make it. Did anyone catch what that was? What's the size of that image? And what's the DPI? No, but close, very close. Good eye. Anyone notice what the color setting was? The gamut setting? No, I didn't either. I saw the 2000. I didn't see the color gamut setting. So, why is that important? Right. Let's go back to this create new and just have a quick refresher on this stuff and why it actually matters. And this is where actually we'll start to build some cool stuff. Funnily enough. So we've got up there. I asked you how big it was. Someone said 2000. It's 2000 by 2000 millimeters. Wasn't even pixels. That's mil. So that was completely off straight away, and it's at 72 DPI pixels per inch. So what would that be? I can't even work out the maths of that. How big that image would be if I started painting that? Would it be super high quality or super low quality? I'm pretty sure it would be pretty bad quality and about that big. But yeah, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start looking at how you can actually just set this appropriately. One of the things that I also see people do when they do know how to navigate this box, which is normally pretty quickly, those of you who know Photoshop will know how to navigate this box, is there's a little bit of a history of going for a very specific set of sizes. Where is it? There it is. That one. That one, fourth one in on the top row. A4, which is 2010 millimeters by 210 millimeters by 297 millimeters at 300 pixels per inch is like the kind of go-to one that a lot of people when they're starting Photoshop aim for, which makes sense because that's a sheet of paper, that's a sketchbook, and most people will have drawn on paper as a child and transitioned to Photoshop, and you stick with A4 because it makes sense in your head. And actually, it's a really bad way to go because, by and large, for the majority of work within a digital arts workflow, in particular, you are never going to print your work. The most of the time, okay. If you are working as a digital artist, you're especially within an animation pipeline, you're designing work that will only exist within a digital workflow. Yes, you're creating something that's passed to another artist, or passed to an animator, or passed to the lighting team, or passed to the character modelers, or whoever it might be, to create a bigger product. So it's quite unlikely you'd ever print anything out. So why on earth would you use a physical paper size to define a non-physical object? So that's the first thing we can start to think about. Well, we don't need physical paper. What we actually need is a high quality digital canvas to work on. We want one that's big enough that allows us to work in great detail, but not so big that it makes smoke billow out the back of our computers. Yeah, we want to keep that kind of fair balance between the two. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a series of these today, actually, for very different purposes. The first one I would like you to create is going to be kind of a medium sketching template. So you need to set this to 3000 by 3000 pixels at 72 pixels per inch, but don't hit enter. Okay, just do those sizes, and I'll do it as well. So I'm going to change this from inches to pixels. Yeah, and that's going to be 3000 by 3000. And then at pixels per inch, I'm going to set that to 72. That's the pixel spacing for most screens is 72 pixels for every inch of television. So you're designing something that is designed to work on a screen as opposed to on paper. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the background color because white is rubbish. Okay, so I've changed that to pixels. 3000, please. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter about the orientation because that's a square. And then the next thing I'm going to do is this background contents just here. I'm going to select this drop-down menu. I'm going to hit custom. And then I get this new dialog box pop up, which is the color picker dialog box. And in that dialog box, I'm going to go to the HSB sliders, which is the first set here. Hue, saturation, brightness. And these will be your friend as a digital artist. You will use them quite a lot. I'm going to leave hue and saturation at 0, but I'm going to change brightness to 50. And then I'm going to hit enter. And you'll see that my little color swatch here on the right-hand side now looks gray. Okay, and then once I've done that, I am just going to hit create, and it will present me with this lovely gray square. Anyone able to tell me why I chose 50% brightness or 50% grey for my background colour?
So that when you draw, high values, it contrasts the background.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. If you work on a white page, how do you make something look brighter on a white page? You can't. How do you make a highlight stand out on a white background? You can't do it. So it's just making very simple decisions at the beginning of, I'm going to set my background to 50, which is exactly according to the light range on this, on Photoshop. That 50 is exactly halfway between absolute light and absolute darkness, or absolute absence of light. So maximum light, minimum light. So it's a good starting point, and it means that now I've got a little bit more kind of choice in the way that I work with my sketches in this space. Now, we're working on a square, which might seem like a very odd shape. When was the last time any of you saw a digital painting that was a square? They do happen, but they're in the minority, right? Like, most are either, especially if they're character-based or character-focused, there's a leaning on portraits, and if they're narrative-focused or environment-focused, they'll lean more likely towards landscape. So having a square probably sounds like a very sort of odd thing to do, yeah, a slightly strange choice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start putting some information into this that will help us kind of begin to design and begin to use this space. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my, I hate that little tool on the side there. I'm going to go to my little rectangle tool, which is here. Zoom in again so you get a bit better view. And then with my rectangle tool, I'm just going to check what I've got up here at the top first. And this is actually a great way to do a quick introduction to interface. So there are three kind of key interfaces in Photoshop that you need to know how to get to very quickly. So the first one is on the left-hand side, which you should all know. That's where your tools live. By and large, your tools should sit down the left-hand side unless you've specifically told them not to. Then on the right-hand side, you have your components. So these are the elements that make up your work, whether that be its channels, its paths, its layers, or any adjustment layers you've added, or any colors you're using, or any tools like the type tool, the paragraph tool. So the components that make up your work and the options for those components sit on the right-hand side. And then at the top, the one that actually people tend to not use these ones up here very often. These are the options for the tools that you have active. So when you select a tool, you will see that the options up the top, they change with every single tool. Every tool in Photoshop can be manipulated to behave a certain way. And what you should do actually is get into the habit of, if you change tools for whatever reason, I mean, let's be honest, you're going to use the brush more than anything, right? That's your go-to tool. But if you're going to use other tools, like the shape tools or any of the adjustment tools like the quick selection or the magic wand or anything like that, before you actually press down and do something on your canvas, go and have a look at what your tools are set to at the top. Just make sure they're actually going to work for you. So I can see straight away that this is set, this rectangle tool is set to have a black fill, which is the inside of the rectangle, and it's set to have a white stroke, which is the outside line. I don't want any of that. That's the exact opposite of what I want this to do. So I'm going to change my fill to empty, so Alfred, which is that red line through a white square, so it's like no content whatsoever. And then I'm going to set my stroke to black. And I'll set my pixel width, I think 5 is probably acceptable. Just a standard line. And then I'm just going to map out a half decent shape. There we go. Not a bad guess, actually. So, that's so close. I thought I had it. I was actually aiming for 1920 by 1080. I got 1780 by 1068. Not bad for freehand. So now I'm going to go, so I've drawn my box in before selecting away from it. So I've just drawn that rectangle. I'm going straight back up to the options. I'm changing this number to 1920. Hit enter. And then this number to 1080. Enter. And that, what is that? What's 1920 by 1080? Yeah, just someone whispered it. It's standard high definition, just base high definition. Yeah, it's 1920 by 1080. So this probably sounds quite strange. Like, why are you working on making a tiny little TV in this giant canvas? You know, what's the point of that? What's the rationale for it? Well, actually, what we're going to do today is we're going to start the process of sketching and designing a painting. Yeah, designing a piece of digital art that can be built on. And because we are animators and we're working within an animation pipeline, we should be thinking about when we create something, what happens to it? Where does it go? Like, who do we give that piece of work to? So working in 1920 by 1080, what that allows us to do is paint something that is the exact proportionate dimensions of a television, of a film. So we're painting something that will look filmic. Yeah, that it's going to look as it should in a shot at the end of that pipeline. So I might actually duplicate these. So I'm just going to go down here. This is where I find out I didn't set up any of my buttons properly. I'm just going to go down to that rectangle layer that I made. And I'm just going to do a quick duplicate of it, just so that I've got two to work with. So that's fine. I don't care that it's called copy for the moment. And then we'll just going to bring that down, get them fairly close together like that. Okay, so yeah, just a couple of basic shapes, decently sized and set up. And now I'm just going to arrange those and kind of organize them so that we don't touch stuff the wrong kind of way. I don't talk about this in the past tense. I say this right now because it still happens to me. One of my biggest problems in Photoshop is layer management and controlling the order in which I do things, especially if I'm working on a very long painting or something that's got a lot of complexity and a lot of layer depth to it, that I'll be working away and I'll be like, this is great, this is great, this is great. And then you look to the bottom right-hand corner and you see that you've drawn it on the wrong layer, or you've drawn it on the layer of a thing that you can't get rid of, or that's now almost impossible to separate. And you have to make that awful decision about, do I start wizarding in here with the quick selection tool and trying to like feather out that piece of content and extract it, or do I just bite the bullet and delete it all, or do I duplicate it? And and then you end up all the time you should be spent painting, you spend fixing the painting that you painted wrong. So a good practice is layer management, and it starts right at the beginning with the basics. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top rectangle layer, which is the copy one. I'm going to hold Shift, select the one below it, and then right down in the bottom here, sorry if you can't see that, bottom right-hand corner, there's a little picture of a folder. I'm going to hit that folder button with them both selected, and that will create a group. And then I'm going to name that group, and this is just the way I do it. It's not a rule, but it's something that I like to do. When I'm working in Photoshop, I write everything. When I type in layer names and folder names and stuff, I always use block capitals. I always write uppercase, as big as I can. And if it is multiple words, so I had lines and color was the name of the folder, I never put a space between the word lines and color, or the word and color. I use a underscore. Okay, so don't leave any spaces, leave underscores. It's all just to do with preventing crashes. Okay, not allowing the machine to have a crash. So yeah, the reason I've done that, so I've put it into frames, and then I don't know if you noticed that, but I locked it as well. So I selected the frames folder, and then I just hit the lock button. The reason I'm hitting the lock button, I don't want to bust it. I don't want to move it or adjust it. I want it to sit frozen inside that space so that I can start working away on it. And now what we're going to do, before we move any further, Shift Command S, Shift Control S, Windows people, sorry. So, and then I'm just going to save this. So I'm going to call this DA for Digital Arts Toolkit _1. Notice how I'm using underscores in the way I name stuff most of the time. And then because I'm on my own machine and I can, I'm going to put mine into its own folder. And hit create. But before I hit enter, we'll just have a quick chat about this. There's a couple of ways you can do this. The standard way to save a Photoshop file is as a Photoshop file. Yeah, and that's the suffix for that is .psd. Yeah, Photoshop document. That's the way we've all done it. You know, that's quite common. But there's another option here that's actually really helpful, and it's the second one on the list here, which is large document format. Now, large document formats are files are really interesting because what they do is they maintain all of the same integrity that a PSD file has. So it's still a PSD file. It maintains your layers, your adjustments, your history, anything that's locked, pathways, just all the stuff that a normal PSD file has. But a large format one compresses it at a much better rate. So a file that is like a 100 megabyte PSD file will only be like a 30 megabyte PSV file. And with digital painting, if you're working on a lot of layers and a lot of complexity within those layers, and you're using things like textured brushes, which all add to the size of a file, saving as large document format is just good practice. I tend to do I do like two. I do like one of each normally when I'm working at home, just to keep like multiple versions, because you always end up deleting one. Or has anyone had it where you go to open a file and it just doesn't open, and you never know why? You're like, what happened between us? But yeah, so it just avoids things like that. So for now, I'm going to save this as a large document format, which we'll see. We'll change it to .psb. I just realised I put an exclamation mark instead of a 1. Not particularly helpful. And then I'm going to hit save and just quickly save that, and that's all fine. And then before we move on, we'll just have a quick chat about why on earth I made you just draw a bunch of rectangles on the screen, and what's that about, and how can we start kind of doing stuff with it. So everyone saved? Yeah. Also, give your machine time to save as well. So you can see already down the bottom right corner, this is already telling me this file is 25.7 meg. Okay, that's what it will come out as when I start painting it. It will start hitting the 30 meg mark. As a good indicator of the megapixels against the actual megabytes. There's quite a nice calculation between them. So yeah, keep that in mind. What it says down there, good indicator for what your sizes are going to end up with as files. So we've got these two frames that are quite cinematic because they're HDTV formats. That's a nice starting point. And you're probably wondering, like, what's all the stuff around the outside? This is about good practice and about getting you into a point where you feel comfortable painting. Because I don't know about you, but I still find at times that actually doing digital painting is almost like a traumatic process. Like, it's quite emotionally draining as well as mentally draining. It's very frustrating when you're trying to do something and it's not working and you don't know why. And you have all these barriers as artists you have to come up against. So where you can, do things to help yourself. Yeah, give yourself help, assistance, wherever you're able to. And this is assistance, this type of file. Because what we've got here is two frames over the top of one another. So if we're doing a painting, we don't get one shot at this, where we just draw it and then, I don't like it. What I'll do is I'll make that layer invisible and then I'll have another go at drawing it. I don't like that. And then you end up with lots of layers of things you don't like. Or worse, where you draw it and you go, no, I don't like that. And then you rub it out again. And then you draw it, you have another attempt, no, I don't like that. And you just go into this cycle. Having two frames of high quality, so a nice big size right in front of you, means you can do two alternative versions of a drawing and see them together at the same time. And both as mock-ups of finished pieces. So you're able to evaluate your work. Okay? It's a really good habit to get into. Down all this space around the edges, this is great. Think of it like a sketchbook. It's a great space to mix a colour palette, to make notes, to draw little doodles of character. If you've got a narrative piece that's got characters and environments and a lot of story kind of going on in it, You want space where you can sketch out character ideas and you're still in the same working environment. Yeah, you're not working on a different file. You can work on it right there, in that same space. And if I'm here and I'm sketching away and I draw something, all right, calm down. I'm sketching away here and I draw something that I really like. What I can do is I go, brilliant, yeah, okay, bring it in. And I can bring that into that space. So I'm working smarter. I'm making things just a little bit easier for myself as I move through a very, very complex and very emotionally draining process. It is hard. And we all have had those points where you actually just give up for the day. Yeah, you don't stop because you finished. You stop because you physically cannot do any more, or you cannot solve the problem, the visual, the creative problem that's in that image. And the only thing more painful than that giving up is when you think you have finished for the day and then you look at it the next day and you hate it. Yeah, because you didn't realise that there were all these errors, and that's something else we're going to look at today. Okay, so that's our kind of basic setup for a standard, like a story piece, a narrative piece. Okay, what I want to do now is we're going to create another quick template, because I noticed that we are 30 minutes. No one's actually drawn anything yet. You're probably thinking, what the hell? This is supposed to be digital art. We are going to do a ton of drawing, I promise. But I want to create another template for you that's really, really helpful, that you'll get a lot out of. So we're going to hit Control N, Command N for a new file. And I'll show you something kind of cool about this, actually. So this one, that one was 3,000 by 3,000. That is actually, if I'm honest with you, that is ever so slightly smaller than what I normally use. Okay, I generally, if I make, on the odd occasion, I'll make a brand new file. I will make 5,000 by 5,000, or I will make 8,000 by 8,000. So I like to go much bigger so that I can get a couple of those frames in. And then what I'll normally do is I'll do like 4 frames, and then when I'm happy, I hide them all in folders, and then I enlarge one of them up so it covers the whole piece. So then I've got like a much bigger version of a drawing that I was happy with. The reason I've asked you to do 3,000 by 3,000 today is because I know that these machines can handle that. Yeah, you're not going to crash the machine. It's a nice workable size. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to create another one slightly different. So this time, call it the crappiest chair. This time we're going for the width of this is going to be 8,000 across. And then the height, I would normally do 1,800, but maybe you can, let's do it at 1,800. Not 2,800, that's not helpful. 72 DPI, PPI, sorry, as they call it in this. We're going to use RGB color, just like we did before. We didn't really talk about RGB color. I know we've got a separate session on color, but yeah, if you're not ever going to print it, you use RGB. If you're going to print it, you use CMYK. Just for now, that's all you need to know. We'll get into it another time. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up here to this preset details. And I'm going to call this one character template. And then once you've typed it in, where did I put my pen? Once you've typed that in, you just hit this little save button here. And it should have put the save button first. My apologies. So character template, that all looks fine. It should have remembered your background color, so you can double check it, but it should have kept it as it was the last time you made a file. You just hit save preset. So now that exists in our saved ones. We're going to open that one up. So I'm double clicking it, and it gives us something that kind of looks like that. It's a very, very strange shape for a Photoshop file. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, everyone got that? Yes, you've made this very long. So it's 8,000 wide by 1,800 high. gives you this really long rectangle. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to the view menu at the top. Go down and just make sure that snap is set for now. Okay, so snap is set up. You also need to do the one above it, rulers. So snap and rulers must be active. And then, before we just get into it, like I said, I'm trying to, at the moment, I'm just kind of working with you to gauge your knowledge, see how fast we can get through this. But there's lots of little things here that you may not know. So we just activated our rulers, which means we should now be able to see the rulers at the sides, so front and sides of our image. The other thing that we can do as well, we set snap, which I'll talk about in a second. With the rulers, you can right-click them and change them to different settings. So I don't know why, I never change mine from centimetres. Don't know why. Mainly because I think if I'm doing a digital painting, I don't think about measurements. Like we haven't brought up rulers to measure anything, I promise you. We brought up rulers because it's got a really cool little functionality attached to it. But yeah, you could change it to pixels and just give you the pixel count, top to bottom. The real reason I actually brought it up, because if you click and drag in the rule at the top, so if I go just to here where the ruler is, I'm going to click and drag down. It gives you a really handy little guide. Now what I want to do is I want to drag that guide down, and you'll feel as you get to the halfway mark, which funnily is 900 pixels, you'll feel it snap. It'll actually lock to that 900 pixel line. And I'm just going to let go, and it's going to leave a little blue guide there for me. Okay? Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to drag one down. This time I'm going to go much, much lower. So I'm going to go probably around the 1700 mark, 1700 pixels down, approximately. I'm not going to get it perfect. 1706, forgive me. And then I'm going to do a third one. And this one, this one's going to be about 1550, 1575 roughly. It's going to sit there. And let's just going to save this. So again, I'm going to use large format. Just save it as a PSB file. Okay, what on earth did I just do? What am I thinking? Let's kind of just unpick what the point of this is. I'm just going to make this a little bit larger. So what we've got here, this is kind of a cross section. Now we've got that middle section there that we're looking at. So what this is a great template to use if you're trying to design a character. Now, one of the ways that I when I was a kid especially, so when I was like 8 years old, way before this, I used to have like a A4 and then A3 of like these roll top sketchbooks. And I'd open a page and I'd create like a character. I mean, for me, I used to create like the 5th, 6th, 7th through to about the 20th member of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was my thing. I'd be like, why turtles? Why not foxes? Draw fox. And that was what I did. But every page was a character. So if I wanted to compare two characters, I'd have to like either tear the pages out of the sketchbook, which I couldn't do because these were like really important possessions. You can't tear your pages out of your sketchbook. Or worse, you'd have to do this weird thing where you like flip back and forth between them. And quite often I'd find actually that I'd draw a character and then I'd put the book away and I'd get it out, and then like a couple of days later and I'd go to draw something again. And I'd open the book on like page 3 and there's a character, and then I'd flick through all the way to where I was up to, say like page 30. And on page 25, there's almost the same character again. And I thought I'd done a new one, and I hadn't. I clearly, my 8-year-old brain only had so many ideas. And I just was regurgitating the same information. Just the same thing again and again. And the reason for that is because I couldn't hold them side by side. I couldn't evaluate my decision making as I was doing it. This template allows you to create characters or props as well. I've used it myself for props, lampposts, funnily enough. This allows you to create templates that you can see side by side, characters you can see side by side. You can just draw one after another, all in a long lineup, much like you would do in a professional production with one character. Say you were doing like a turnarounds page of a character from all different angles. You can do the same, but with character generation. So you're creating new ideas, but you can compare them to the one before. So what are the lines for? Okay, the lines represent, so the center line is your horizon line. Okay, that is the point of the sort of disappearing horizon line. So what we're trying to say here is we're looking straight at this. Okay, we're looking straight at this kind of person or creature or whatever it might be. So that's dead level to us. One of the important things to remember about digital art, and we're going to talk about this a lot more when we do the more complex paintings next week, is the horizon line has a direct relationship to where your head is. Okay, your eyes and the horizon line have a relationship. So the height of the horizon line actually also defines like your height from the ground or your height in comparison to another object. Okay, so that logic basically says that if I were to draw, it's a very complex logic, but we're going to go into more detail with this as we kind of move on with it. Let's get my brush tool. That if I draw a guy's head at that height, he's the same height as me. That makes sense? Yeah? So my eye line is level with his eye line because he lines up with my horizon line. Do this, go outside and check it. Like this is real science, okay? They do line up. If the character's head is up here, and this is the horizon line, I'm looking up at it. Okay? Or think about it in terms of a camera. Yeah, the horizon line's level, the camera's at the same head height. If the horizon line's not, the camera's a little bit lower. There's nothing wrong with it being lower. It's completely fine. It doesn't impact the way you draw. It's just important to remember. So that's our horizon line. These two lines at the bottom, they actually represent distance lines. So they're there to give us a sense of depth. So what do we mean by that? The best way to think about it is the bottom line, so this one, that is the foreground line, or the front toe is the toe line, and the second line above it here, that's the heel line, or the further back line. So the reason we have these two lines is because when we draw a character, we should be looking to place that character's feet in a way that it gives them depth. Because again, this is like such a common rookie mistake with character design, is the characters are like flat. They exist like as colours and shapes, but they don't have any depth to them. Like they're not posed in a way that's truly three-dimensional. And normally, when people make that mistake and a character's standing, it's quite obvious that it's flat. They're not posed properly. Their feet aren't positioned right. They look weird. But I tell you when people get away with it, when they draw characters that are like floating. A lot of people design characters that are just like suspended in midair. And because their feet aren't touching the ground, you don't realise they're completely flat and they haven't got any dynamicism to them or any depth. So that's what these lines help us to do. That we can look at this and kind of from it make some clear decisions. Let's just make my brush a little bit smaller. We can make some clear decisions about foot placement. So I can say like, there's a foot there. And there's a foot there. It's turned snapping off. Sorry, my snap's gone a little bit crazy. It's because I'm so far zoomed out. So yeah, I've got 1 foot there and 1 foot there. And what that tells me is that the character, this leg's got to be bent and this leg comes forward a little bit more. So straight away, it just creates that tiny little bit of depth that we can work from. Okay, and then with that, because we've got this great big lineup, we can place all those characters side by side. That's actually quite small. Normally, I normally go for like through the feet. So I do one there. Yeah, and one kind of there. Or even if you've got larger characters, like if you've got a character whose head is up here, yeah, you just fill the whole space. Okay, so it just helps you kind of map where those characters are and how they kind of all sit together. So save that template. You don't have to leave it open because we're not really going to work on that. We're not going to work with characters today. We're more about story and setting up something a bit more complex. So I want you to save this one, and then we're going to open up go back to the other one, okay? So yeah, just take a moment to do that. Let's get rid of these. All right. I've got a challenge for you. It's only going to take me like 2 minutes. Can everybody find me? On them, I want you to do this. Look at your own machine and do not look at anybody else's. So just narrow in on your screen, work in your space. Don't lean over, don't ask anyone. Okay? I would like you to find me on that web browser you brought up, Chrome or whatever you're using, on 5 different tabs, 5 pictures of castles. Castles. Yes, in the corner. What's up? It's acting weird. Your file is enormous. It's 136,000 pixels wide. You need to go back and start with that. It's smaller. No, just fine. 5 tabs, 5 castles. Okay, just one more minute. Okay. Hopefully you've all found them. Now I've got to find something on my absolute mess. Interesting. There it is. Okay. Everyone found some castles?
Yeah.
Okay, get your castles up on the screen. Are your castles, or the castles you've selected, how many of them are the same as the person sitting directly next to you? Any matches? No? No pair in here has got even one match.
I mean, what do you mean by match? I mean, you have to check this. I can't just ask us.
Is it the same image?
No.
No, but it's not the same image.
Yeah.
I want the same image. Anyone got the same image as someone sitting next to them? No, right, okay, so the reason I asked you to do that, wait, sorry, before I get into this, my next question, how many of you used Internet Explorer? How many of you used Chrome? Okay, how many of you used Google Image Search? Who else, any other search engines used apart from Google Image Search? Sorry? You used ArtStation?
Bing.
Did you use Bing? Jeez, is dead, isn't he? He's been gone a long time. Okay, the reason I ask is because what I just set you is effectively a very basic research task. Yeah, just find a thing. Okay, I'll go and find a thing. And there are a couple of things that we come up against when we start to do research. The first one is that search engine image search, okay, is not always helpful. Okay, the first thing that it does is it doesn't show you pictures of the thing that you are searching for. It shows you pictures that either have the file name of what you are searching for or have a keyword within the URL address where that image exists of what you're searching for. So it might not always give you good results, okay, so especially if you're searching for something quite complex. Okay, your image search is not always your friend. The second problem you have is what's called choice paralysis. This is where so many things are presented to you, you don't know which ones to pick. Yeah, you search for a castle and you go, I don't know which castle I want, so I'll just have that one. And then you go back to you save that one and you do the search again and you open it up and go, well, I've already got that one, so now I have that one. And you're picking almost at random. Okay, you're picking just based on what's in front of you. How many of you, anyone at all, pick 5 castles that they really like the image of? You got 5, you like every single image you've got, yeah? Okay, so what, a quarter of you got 5 good castles. I make that a 25% success rate in the room. Okay, so it's not as effective as we want it to be. And one of the things we have to do when we're designing is remember that we are not the complete font of all knowledge. We do not have the entire history of our world, of all the things that have and have not existed, all in our heads. So we have to do research. And if we're doing research, we've got to do it in a way that is as easy as possible and is not going to cause things like choice paralysis or cause us to use search terms that aren't useful. Okay? How many of you got a Pinterest account? Good. Use it, and not for memes. Use it to catalog research. Okay? So, actually get some real clear research. So the first thing you should do when you research anything, how many of you thought of a castle before you searched for a castle? How many of you thought of a specific castle? Good, a couple of you. That's where you start. Start with what you know. Okay, so don't search castle, search the castle you know. I searched the first castle that came into my brain, which is Hauska Castle in the Czech Republic. And if anyone wants a crazy story about that castle, I will happily tell you, because it's one of the maddest places on earth. But I'm excited. It's a great castle. Okay, but that's where I started. I started with that castle, and then I grabbed that because I knew that castle. It's like I know this one. It's this one. It's that castle. So I know this one. So the next thing I did, and you would have seen me if any of you had finished earlier or watching me doing, is I kind of then sort of paused for a moment and thought about okay, what other castles do I know? Warwick. Warwick was the next one that popped into my brain. So I searched Warwick Castle and I grabbed an image of that and I catalogued that one as well. And then when I did that, I created a sub-catalog as well. So on Pinterest, I've got castles, and then I've got a subcategory which is European. So straight away I was making design decisions of okay, I'm sticking with European castles. The next thing I did was okay, the only ones I can think of right now in this quick task were Hauska and Warwick. So that's not enough. I need some help. So instead of going back to the image search and running the risk of seeing a bunch of castles that weren't going to fit what I was searching for, remember, I've narrowed this down now. I made a clear design decision about castles that were European castles. That's what I was going for. I don't want to see castles that aren't European castles. That's not helpful. As I noticed, I saw people over here, someone had pictures of Aztec temples and ziggurats and all sorts of stuff. None of those would be relevant to my search. So what I did instead is I got off of image search and I just went to the normal search engine and I searched Czech castles. So I narrowed it down again and I found Crossed Castle, which is this one here, and I found Orlik Castle. Now this is an important piece of decision making in terms of design, because when I expand these, there is a very clear relationship between them. That's Hauska, look at its architecture, and that's Orlik. They have a similar design aesthetic. So choice paralysis is coming away, it's being stripped away, and now clear design decisions are being made. All right? So this is what we mean about doing good research. You are not expected to know what a castle looks like inside your head. Okay? You've got to go and find one. You've got to find that material, but searching randomly for one is the messiest way to do it. I mean, your castle doesn't even exist. That's so but that's the challenge. How can you now find one that's got the same architecture as a fictional castle? So these are all challenges that we give ourselves if we don't have a really good strategy for researching. All right. So what we're going to do now, I want you to take another 5 minutes. I promise you there'll be some glory. I really do. I want you to pick one kind of design identity from the castles you've got. So if you've got some Japanese castles, or if you've got some, like South American, like the ziggurat temples, or European castles, or whatever, or anything like that, or Romans used to build those weird fortress things, can't remember what they called them. Pick one, and then build a quick gallery, a quick selection of as many of them as you can find in 5 minutes of the same design identity. Okay, so keep that design identity, whatever it is, whether it's French castles or Italian fortresses or whatever it might be. Build a catalogue of that kind of clear theme. And I'm going to do the same. I'm joining you here. I've got my Czech castles up here. I'm going to go, so Rabi is next. That is an old castle. got one of Rabbi, and then Carlstone. So let's get that one, and that will do. Wow, that's a slightly different one. That's really interesting. Okay, so we'll pull this one in. Okay. And then back to Photoshop. And then actually, I'll tell you what you can do just to speed the process up, because you're all very smart individuals. Can you just get all of those images onto your machine? Just save them, download them, screen grab them, however you want to do it. European. So I'm just doing screen grabs of mine, so I don't really want to overthink it. This is about doing research and getting reference. It's not about kind of a finished article. So put that one up. And that one did. So crossed now. So 4. And last one. Bright glasses there. Okay. So we're going to go back to Photoshop, to here, just to our main layer. And then we're going to do one quick task before we go for a break, and that will set us up perfectly to actually start using these files. So what I'd like you to do, if you just pause for a second, some of you may know this already, but if you don't, it's good habit to get into. What I'd like to do is I'm going to bring in those files into Photoshop to use them as active reference within this design. So the way that I do that is I go File at the top, and then I'm going to go Place Embedded. Now there are two types of places: Place Embedded and Place Linked. Place Embedded brings the file into Photoshop. So the size of the file that you select will impact the size that your Photoshop file becomes when you import it. Place Linked works slightly differently. That creates a dynamic link between the two files. So it references the source file, which is fine until you move the source file from its folder wherever you've saved it. And then the link gets broken and it becomes a bit of a headache. So I would advise, especially for just flat images, you go Place Embedded. Then I'm going to go to wherever I just put it, which will be the desktop because it was a screenshot. And it is, I'm going to bring these in one at a time. And as I bring them in, so I'm going to start with the newest one. I'm going to bring them in. Not going to resize them. I'm just going to let them kind of sit down the side for the moment. So one by one, bring them all in. So if you could do the same, please, so your file starts to look like mine. So you can see I'm trying, I don't want them to necessarily overlap too much, but I don't want them all spread apart. I want them bunched together so that with minimal effort, my eye can draw comparisons between them. So, I want to be able to analyze them with relative ease. So I'm getting them quite close together, and if they need to overlap a bit, that's fine. But as long as they don't kind of ruin each other, it's okay. Right, so we did that one. This one, and of course, yeah, Haska. This one can go here. I think Warwick's kind of a cheat, actually, because it's the one that doesn't fit with the others. But we'll keep it in there because it's cool. And then Haska. Actually, Haska's a little bit small. So I'm just going to enlarge that slightly. And hopefully it will resample quite nicely. Let's have a look. Yeah, that'll do. It's not had too much of a negative impact. And then when I've done that, I'm going to hit save. And it is 3:10. So we are going to take a break for 10 minutes just to get a drink, use the loo or whatever. And then we come back, solemnly swear, we're going to start sketching. Like, we've got the procedural stuff out of the way. We can just like plow into the actual design work. Right, folks, yeah, go and get up, because it's quite warm in here. It's going to get really stuffy if we all stay in here. So I recommend you get up, go and walk for 5 minutes. But yeah, we'll be back here. We're going to start at exactly 20 past. So you've got just enough time to go and get a drink if you need to.